Jon Stewart. Ba-dum, bum, ba-da-bum. This is why Trump became popular in the first place. Uh-oh. What's up?
We are joined by Jon Stewart himself.
But who else would it be? Fareed, it's nice to see you. I love your aquarium.
Thank you, exactly.
Yes.
We can go swimming afterwards. Yes. So I got to ask you, it's a big thing in the news, Donald Trump indictment. There are people
What?
No, just stay with me for a minute. There are people
I've been
who
watching
say,
the live cameras at the courthouse. It's imminent. Breathless speculation.
So there are people who say, yes, you have to indict him because he has in fact broken the laws, and there are other people who say this is going to turn him into a martyr. This is his path to redemption.
Sure.
How do you think about it?
Oh, the law should always take into account someone's popularity. I think that's. I mean, what's happened to our country? It's as though you can't even commit financial fraud anymore. You can't inflate the value of your properties when you need a loan and then deflate it with taxes. I mean, the next thing you know, they're going to send you to jail instead of your lawyer and your accountant and your campaign manager and everyone else.
Damn. Jon Stewart is anti-Donald Trump? I didn't know that. Based.
Around you. The idea that someone may face accountability who's that rich and powerful is outrageous. And this country shouldn't stand for it.
But what if it turns out to be his get out of jail free pass? It's his path to, people will see him as a martyr.
Wait, just really quick. Do people not already see Donald Trump as a martyr? Every Republican that I've ever talked to already acts like they're all personally Jesus Christ on the cross. The idea that there's anything you could do to make them think Donald Trump is a martyr, like they already think that, like entirely, completely. They believe it to an insane degree. They literally think he's fighting like a one-man war against the deep state. That was like his running premise. Martyrdom was pre-packaged with his candidacy. So I don't like. That's not going to change, you know? It's like when people say, oh, well, if you arrest a bunch of Republicans for sedition for their collaboration on January 6th, you would be proving them right because the state would be going after them. You'd be making them look like, you know, they're the victims of targeted political action. But that's all they ever say they are, you know? That's the only thing they say they are. They've never been like, well, I'm being treated fairly now, but if the government ever does this, then actually, you know, they can't do that. Fascists can't do that.
Okay.
You're okay with that? He could become president again.
He could become president anyway. Fareed, we either have the rule of law or we have no rule of law. The rule of law does not take into account if that might make you a martyr to somebody. I'd much rather have the conversation be, what is the law? What exactly are we saying that he did? His lawyer went to jail for this same situation for a couple of years. So what is the crime? Is it a crime?
There are people who say it's selective prosecution, that this would not...
Everything is selective prosecution. The reason...
Holy shit. Has Jon Stewart been watching my streams? I literally said that. I can't believe it's confirmed that he's a viewer of mine. But yeah, I said that. Like, it is definitely true that, like, you would have to have a chip on your shoulder to go after somebody as powerful as a former president over something like this. But, like, we always should have been doing that. Like, it sucks that there isn't a ubiquitous drive to hold people in power to account, but I'm not going to get angry at them selectively doing a good thing when it's against such a bad person, you know?
And why Donald Trump became popular in the first place. And the reason why these populist movements is that the citizenry have become fed up with the lack of accountability for those in power. We have no accountability in our financial systems. We have no accountability for the bankers. I mean, our Congress trades stocks with information they get making laws, and they do it to great success.
Yeah, tens and tens of millions of dollars. It's great. Just like free insider trading exception because you're in Congress. It's super cool.
They won't stop it because they're the ones in charge of making the law about it. And instead of bringing accountability to the rampant corruption that surrounds our government and our financial systems, the Supreme Court just changed the definition of corruption. rather than prosecuting it, rather than holding people accountable, they just went, how about this? How about, okay, why don't we just say this?
It's even better than that. Was that
Hey, the phrase lobbying is legalized corruption sounds like such an I'm 14 and this is deep. This was my first political thought. I haven't graduated high school like political argument, but it's actually completely true. It's actually 100% true. Like in lobbying allows for the execution of what would otherwise be corruption through legal channels. The exchange of money, power, resources, promises, in order to get preferential treatment from people in power. Lobbying is just a legal structure to facilitate that. You know, it's much in the same way that you could say, like, legalizing marijuana is just a way of forming legal channels for the marijuana trade, which was a crime previously, you know? It's really a matter of framing, like, okay, well, do you think it should be legal or do you think it shouldn't be? Well, I'm okay with marijuana being for sale at local dispensaries legally. I don't know how okay I am with the degree of, like, collaboration between people in power and our people in government. You know, I don't know if I'm okay with that at all, actually. So you take a look at corruption, it's like, okay, well, sure, but turn it around, you know? Is your problem with corruption the idea of powerful people getting more than their due in a democratic system? Or is your problem with corruption that they didn't do it legally? Like, if you look at a system where you still have that degree of collaboration, but it's all being done through channels that have been legislated, it's like, okay, well, so was your issue with it that it was illegal or that it was wrong?
they said, you politicians, you think that's corruption because you're engaging in it, but we actually don't think it's
and we're going to tell you, don't worry about it. You can influence peddle as long as you don't explicitly say, by the way, this money is so that I may influence this law specifically, and you have to lay out. Like, that is what has the lack of confidence that people have in the system is, and you even see it throughout the media, even that conversation. Should we not? It's oh, but he's popular, and then it might make him more popular, but not less popular. Did he do something wrong? What was it? Explain that to us. What is the law that he supposedly violated?
Law and order.
What are the ramifications of it?
Law and order.
I don't see him ever actually going to jail. I personally don't even care. I just want a system that somehow finds a consistent accountability.
So, in many ways, you
based. Oh, is it not? It's not done. Okay, just doing a clip. Yeah, yeah. Consistency would be nice. Yeah, it's not like lefties are like super defensive of Democrats with their obvious corruption. You know, when you want to talk about accountability, too, one thing that's important to understand is that what I would consider corruption doesn't have to involve any contact between the wealthy and people in political power. So, like, here's an example, right? If there's a state, you know, let's just say hypothetically there was a U.S. state that relied really, really, really heavily on revenues generated from a specific industry. It can be the defense industry, it can be the oil industry, it can be the coal industry, whatever, you know. Any legislators from that state have an extreme bias towards legislating in favor of things that corporation wants, because there's always the implicit threat those corporations might just leave. So I think there's a strategy that's done in, like, production chains where I think the defense industry, like defense industry corporations do this a lot, you know, like Lockheed or whatever, where if you want to build a plane in the United States, you don't centralize everything about building that plane in one state. You spread it out over as many states as you can, so as many politicians as possible have a vested interest in the success of your company. You know, if you're a congressman, are you really going to vote to reduce the national defense budget when a large portion of that budget goes towards a corporation that sustains tens of thousands of jobs in your state? The U.S. Defense Department is the biggest employer in the states, if I remember correctly. So you spread that out right way, and now all of a sudden, you know, you've got everyone on your side, and you don't have to say a thing. None of this involves a wealthy person going down to D.C. going, oh, I think we could see a mutual benefit in our arrangement. Like, you don't have to do that. All you have to do is be powerful, and political favors will just roll towards you. That's how it works. At least that's how it works in a capitalist system, of course, because private ownership of these corporations is exactly how you have these power differentials. You know, hypothetically, if there was another system, say with democratic control, you know, you might see a slightly different set of incentives, perhaps, because then, even if you still do have very wealthy corporations in your state, because you are responding to proletarian interests instead of bourgeois interests, they level out more plainly with the interests of the other proletarians in your state. I feel like it might fix some stuff, you know, personally. I think it'd be a good idea, worth trying. It's, you know, it's a crazy idea.
But at least for me, you created or defined American political satire. How has that changed? I mean, it feels to me like the stuff you did, you know, the showing the video and then commenting, it's become, it's everybody does it, and it's not even comics. I mean, that's what Tucker Carlson does when he wants to make his points.
Sure.
He's borrowing from your playbook.
Yes. No, it's a real delight knowing. It's always good to arm the most cynical and worst people in media.
But do you look at it and say, now this whole thing is commoditized?
Well, it was, listen, it was commoditized. You know, I wasn't doing it out of gracious altruism. I mean, we were selling Budweiser. It's always been commoditized. It was, I think it's, you know, there's a lot of talk of, so exposing absurdity.
He's really starting to look older. Well, he's very handsome, so it's okay.
You're exposing hypocrisy. What's the point?
How do you feel about Trevor Noah in comparison to Jon Stewart? I feel like it's an insult to Jon Stewart to even compare them. It is genuinely insane how far ahead of the game Jon Stewart has been at every point in his career over the past, like, 25, 30 years. Just non-stop head and shoulders above the crowd. It's not even that I dislike Trevor Noah that much, though I don't really like the guy. But it's not a serious, like, it's not a strong feeling. It's just Jon's that good.
Well, the point is that this is a relentless fight. They always talk about, you know, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. But it doesn't bend towards justice by gravity. Like, you have to bend it. And there's a bunch of people trying to bend it back. And you use every tool in your arsenal, and none of them will be, you know, the one thing. There is no panacea. It takes, you know, all those different things doing in Washington over these past few years gave me a great understanding of how things actually get done incrementally and sometimes in one fell swoop.
I feel like internally Jon Stewart has, like, the ontologically evil meme cycling in his head like a Beyblade, you know? I feel like he spent so much time in Congress arguing in favor of healthcare for 9/11 responders, and from what I understand, like, his experience in doing that was basically him meeting with politicians, and some of them being like, yeah, we'll see what we can do, and then not doing anything, and some of them just flatly saying to him, like, I just don't care, I'm gonna go eat like a baby, you know, and then they just walk off. I'd be very surprised if his brain wasn't just like just a drier cycle of TOS memes.
But our country is held together by hundreds of really talented legislative aides. Their bosses,
that's true,
many times are wind-up dolls who really don't know. I mean, half of it, if you go down there, especially the Senate, is like an assisted living facility. Like the intramural sports at the Senate. So, you know, it's held together by these legislative aides that are relentlessly trying to do the right thing, and by the thousands of grassroots activists that are trying to get access. And they're blocked by a moat of lobbyists and moneyed interest.
This is why I say you can get a lot of good done being a political aide. This is one of the reasons why I stress that a benefit of canvassing is that it gives you access to those connections in the long run. Because if you are a dedicated aide, you have a lot of influence over the talking heads, potentially, if you do your job well, and if they're even a little bit flexible, which some of them will be, you know.
That prevent the people in that building from doing the work that best benefits all the people outside of that building. And that's the process. So you have to use every tool.
Does that mean we blame Republican political aides for Republican bills? To a large extent, yeah. Some of them come from grassroots and some of them come from other organizations, but a lot of the aides to Republicans are far more evil than you could possibly fucking imagine. The politicians oftentimes are old and addled and don't know what's going on, and they are receptive. And their their aides are literally like neo-Nazis and politically active white supremacists who are doing whatever they can to win through those politicians. They can't win themselves. You know, being good at legislation and being a politician are two different things. You know, there are limits to that, but you can still have a lot of power as an aide.
Tool you have to permeate that force field.
But presumably the people there who are Republicans, who are conservative Republicans...
DeSantis has a great writer. Tucker Carlson, his main writer for 5 years was found on a neo-Nazi forum. It was barely even a news story. Most popular political pundit in America, just, oh yeah, their primary writer for the past half of a decade was a neo-Nazi who bragged on neo-Nazi forums about slipping neo-Nazi shit into Tucker Carlson's script more and more over time. Just happened. Moving along. You think the next guy he got was any less of a neo-Nazi? You think Tucker didn't know?
Those aides think they're doing the right thing, and they're trying to get across their...
Sure, but they're doing it, they're honest. Look, if you can find honest brokers down there, you can work with them. What I'm saying is that force field around it is made up of not honest brokers. It's moneyed interests, it's lobbyists, it's people who are weaponizing misinformation and disinformation. And all of those form this, it's the most cloistered
so you
universe.
You found you could deal with very conservative Republicans.
Of course.
Because there was some way to find common ground.
People of good faith. Now, there were huge disagreements about certain things, but when you found someone of good faith, you could always get something done.
So based. I did a thing. Such a good guy. Somebody asked earlier if Jon Stewart could be president if he ran. I actually think that with a proper lead up, Jon Stewart would have a shot. I don't think it'd be likely. I don't think he'd be the #1 candidate, but I think he would be. I think he'd be considered like or I think he could work his way into like a position of great prominence. He's still got a lot of time, doesn't he? He's only like 60, right? Jon Stewart age. I think he said before he's exactly 60. God, he looks good. I think he said before that he just absolutely does not want to do politics. He's also short for a president. He's 5'7". I don't know if that would like affect anything. He's a comedian first. Well, maybe it's time to put America first. Yeah, I think he'd be pretty popular.